Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 here to preview on ESPN Saturday night. We don't have the lines in front of us as we do this Thursday morning, but Ken Pomeroy has Auburn a 10-point favorite. Bart Torvik even more lopsided at 12 points. We'll get into all the particulars of the matchup in just a second, but first a reminder that our channel presented by BetOnline, which continues to be your number one source for all your basketball wagering needs, including pro and college hoops throughout the year, with up-to-the-minute odds, stats, and trends. You can follow your favorite team's path to the playoffs with live in-game betting, contests, and all the best player props. Experience the world's best wagering platform anytime from your desktop or mobile devices. Head to BetOnline today to become part of the team. Remember to use our promo code BELIEVE, that is BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. Blake Lovell, a lot of stuff to discuss here. Auburn coming off its worst performance of the year, just got obliterated in Gainesville. Comes home and does what was semi-predictable, although the margin of victory. You beat South Carolina by 40. We discussed that game, that performance. I don't know that any team in college basketball has played a better game than Auburn did last time out. And then we got Kentucky, which lost to Gonzaga at home a week ago and then recovered and had a fairly impressive performance against Ole Miss. Kentucky's defense has been an issue all year, but the Cats played better defense. In fact, the defensive rating moved up about 20 spots in Ken Pom, in part because Onyenso blocked about 10 shots. And Kentucky's still not a good defensive team, but Kentucky does have one thing that can maybe neutralize Auburn a little bit. Auburn's strength is its front court. Kentucky's got 3 7-footers. It's kind of an interesting matchup here, and maybe a little more interesting is it appears Kentucky is healthier than it's been in a while, perhaps.
Yeah, that's the thing with Kentucky. I mean, we kept saying it. It's just, I say it all the time. I'm like, Reeves and Mitchell have to be on the floor for Kentucky to, I think, have a chance against teams like this. And now that seemingly they are, at least as of, Wagner and Mitchell were both on the floor in the game against Ole Miss, and we assume they're going to be out there against Auburn. And so I think in that scenario, it's pretty simple. Like, if you have Kentucky and you have your full roster available, then okay, maybe you can try to find a path here. Like you said, obviously it's a great offensive team. They at least showed signs of improvement against Ole Miss defensively, although this is a much different test going to Auburn. Like you said, coming off of one of the best games we've seen from anybody this season against South Carolina. But it's just we just haven't seen Kentucky a lot with everybody at their disposal over the past little while. And so how does that factor in? Obviously, you need the depth to match the depth that Auburn's going to run at you. And so, yeah, this is quite an interesting setup. And as always, I mean, I think the big question here is, how is Kentucky going to defend? Because if they go in and they don't defend well, as I mentioned in the preview, like when Auburn gets rolling, if you don't find a way to step up defensively and slow them down, they will do exactly what they did to South Carolina, which was just, again, you talk about South Carolina, that's usually what they do to teams, where they just use their defense to just put a full stop to you. They couldn't do that against Auburn. And a lot of teams can't do that against Auburn when they're in that arena. So is Kentucky going to defend? That's the question. Onyenso needs to block about 10 more shots in this game to slow down this Auburn team right now and the way they play. So, I mean, this is there are so many different storylines we could push in this game, but it's very simple. Is Kentucky going to defend? If they don't defend, they're going to get beat by double digits here. If they do defend and they, play their at least somewhat usual way that they play offensively, they're not going to get the easy shots that they would get against, lower-tier defensive teams, because Auburn's one of the best out there. But they'll at least give themselves a chance. But it all starts on the defensive end of the floor.
Well, and I'm not certain Mitchell is 100% based on playing time. He played, 21 minutes last game. Mitchell, most of the year, has been a 35 to 40-minute guy. We started seeing his minutes go down right before he went on the shelf for a couple of games. So that may be something to watch. But look, it is going to be tough based on the way these teams have played their seasons for Kentucky to win because we've talked about Auburn's front court. Williams and Broome gave Auburn, I think, 44 points last time out. Kentucky has this weird thing where it's number 2 in the country in block rate, yet number 106 in defense because it's bad about everything else. I could see a little bit of a path to victory here to where Kentucky's bigs with their size are able to neutralize Auburn a little bit. And what have we said? When Auburn doesn't play well, they're probably getting too happy with the 3 ball and maybe having guys shoot them that don't need to be shooting them. Kentucky, on the other hand, number 7 in the country, 3-point shooting. Kentucky, when it hits over 40% of its threes, I think it is either unbeaten or close to being unbeaten. You could maybe check the record there for me, but there is a little bit of a weird path. I mean, again, you have to come up with pretty good reasons that Auburn's going to lose this game on its home floor because that's not happened all year. And in fact, when Auburn has won its games, which it is now 120, it has won every single one of them by double digits, which is just incredible. But I think this is a little bit of a throw some of the numbers out of it scenario potentially, given the dynamics of how the teams match up physically, and given Auburn's struggle with the 3, and given that Kentucky can hit a lot of them at a high percentage. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if something weird does happen, I do think the script is along those lines.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's got to be something close to that because, as we said too, it can't be a situation where, kind of like at South Carolina, where Kentucky just didn't get up enough threes. Like they got to put up a lot of threes in this game because I think going in, you're going to have to hit a certain point total to feel like you're going to be able to win here. Like this ain't going to be 75-65 or anything. Like this thing's going to be up there with the way these two teams play, I would think. So, yeah, I mean, I just think that's where Kentucky's got to make sure they're getting open shots. They can't get stagnant offensively where it's just 4 guys standing around, one guy tries to make plays. And this team's been much better at that. That's what we said this year, why they're so improved offensively. Not just because they shoot it well. It's just I think they have guys who see the floor very well. They're a good passing team. Their awareness is there offensively, which is why they are elite in that category. And it's why they also get good shots from 3 they've seemingly put themselves in that position. But it's, again, are you going to be able to get those same kind of opportunities against Auburn at home? Because if I go through and look at this, there are 2 things that sort of, if I try to find the numbers here, let me see here. I'm going to try to pull it up. But so Auburn, in terms of their defense and what teams have done against them, obviously Alabama hit 9 threes. That's a little different, right? But, South Carolina, as we said, 3 of 15. Vanderbilt went 4 of 27. These are just the home games. Ole Miss went 4 of 17 in Auburn at Neville Arena. LSU hit 9, but remember that was kind of LSU in comeback mode. So I don't know if that's fully. And LSU's a pretty good shooting team, as we said. So A&M went 3 of 19. So this is the best shooting team they played outside of Alabama. There's no question about that. But even Alabama, right? Like they weren't their usual selves. They hit 9 of 26, but that's for Alabama. That's not that's not the norm. So it's just, is Kentucky going to work enough to get those good shots? And they're going to have to work, right? You're going to have the environment. You're going to have the crowd going crazy. You're going to have to – communication is everything when you play at Neville Arena. And when you got a young team like this in Kentucky, that's where the 2 older guys, I say it, like I'm going to go back to it. Reeves and Mitchell are going to have to play 2 of their best games of the season in this one if they're going to have a chance to win this one, because the communication aspect playing in that arena is huge. And if you get off, if you get on different pages, even for 2 or 3 possessions, that's the difference in Auburn pushing it out to an 8-point lead, or even further to where you're just in total comeback mode at that point. So that's one aspect of this. Meanwhile, for Kentucky on the road this season, I mean, if you take the Florida game out, which was the first game,
they're not awful on the road. Yeah.
Well, but here's my bigger point. If you take the Florida game out, which I'm not saying we have to, but that was the first game of SEC play, I think we would both agree that both teams are different than they were on January the 6th. So now take everything into account since then. Kentucky lost the overtime game at A&M. They got blown out at South Carolina. They beat Arkansas by 6 on the road in a 63-57 game. Arkansas is a bad team. They blew out Vanderbilt 109-77, which A&M couldn't do. So just kind of a bad recipe. But my bigger point is this. Kentucky has not played this kind of road game. And this is the first time this year that they have played this kind of road game. And that would worry me a little bit. Now, the South Carolina game, I think, actually rivals it if you think about it. And if you can play the comparative, all that. Okay, well, Auburn just beat South Carolina by 40, and it's just not how this works. If we did that, Chris, if we played that equation, okay, the mathematical equation, Auburn beat South Carolina by 40. South Carolina beat Kentucky by 17. Auburn minus 57 against the Cats here in Neville Arena.
Minus 57.
That's not how it works, but if we wanted to do that,
say?
we could. The net would say, well, I'll let you know before we make our picks. But all I'm saying is, yeah, like you saw, and we always say, when Kentucky comes to town, it's the biggest game you're going to find, right? Like, it doesn't matter how good Kentucky is. It's just that's the way it works. So, but man, this is Auburn. Like, this is Neville Arena. Because even South Carolina, like, sure, that was a great atmosphere. But remember, South Carolina had lost a home game to Georgia before they really got rolling and all that stuff. But this is just a different beast. This Kentucky team, with so many freshmen, underclassmen playing a lot of minutes, they've not seen something like this year. And that's my hesitation here, is does this turn into South Carolina Part 2, but maybe even worse? Because if you play like that, where you were, again, not the aggressor. Remember, Cal said it. Why were they so good against Ole Miss? They were the aggressor. If they come out and they let Auburn dictate this game and how it's played, good luck. So,
all right, take all I said and sort of set it aside for the moment. If I'm picking somebody to beat Auburn in Neville Arena, and my life is depending on it, I don't know how much I'm really going to have the will to pick somebody against Auburn in that building. The only two teams that I can maybe think of are Connecticut and Purdue, which Auburn does not play this year on the regular season schedule. Now, if they play those teams in the NCAA tournament, I think that gets interesting. And both those have premium bigs. And we've been through Kentucky's situation with big men, but none of those guys are Klingon and Edey. Point being, it's just very difficult to pick against Auburn in that building. And with Kentucky being that inconsistent on the defensive end, this does not feel like the spot either. So give me Auburn here.
Yeah, I've really been down on Auburn, as we know from my pick in the South Carolina-Auburn game. Really been down on the Tigers this year. I've got to pick a jungle cat here. And let me just tell you that I'm pretty sure, I hope. When did Bruce Pearl get to Auburn? I can't even remember now. What year was it?
It's been 5 or it's been 6. No, it's been more than that.
Way more than that.
2015. Wow. Okay.
All right. So, since then, Kentucky has beaten Auburn once in that arena. Only once. And, 2022, Auburn won by 9. 2021, Auburn won by 7. 2020, Auburn won by 9. They lost by 2 in 2019. I remember that game. That was a wild game. 2018, Auburn won by 10. 2016, Auburn won by 5. So, that's all that to say that, those were all close games. I don't know if, we'll see if this one is, because it really is going to come down to how much do you trust Kentucky defensively. I don't think that what they did against Ole Miss solved everything, and I'm not saying anyone says that, but this is just a different beast here. When you go to Auburn, and I mean, like, where people may say, hey, is Auburn going to have a little bit of a letdown after that South Carolina game? Why would they? I mean, why would they? Like, why would they have a letdown? They just beat.
They have so much swagger in that building. It's off the charts.
Well, that's the thing. If you thought the atmosphere was huge for a top 15 showdown against South Carolina, guess what it's going to look like against Kentucky?
Right.
It's going to be just as wild. And so, yeah, I'm not picking against Auburn here. Obviously, we had our fun with the South Carolina Auburn pick in the Paris Pact of 2024, but I'm going back to it, Chris. You're going to the
Williams Brooms.
The Williams. Who knows at this point? Let's just call it the Tiger Treaty, and that is
Tiger Treaty.
we're going to go with the Treaty of Pearl, and it's just whatever we want to call it. Yeah, I'm going with that one for this one because I just cannot. That's the thing, right? Is Auburn is so good that they can run anybody out of the gym. Kentucky has some of those intangibles of being able to score the ball and not beating themselves from a turnover standpoint that at least give you got to score. Like, you got to score points. Like, it's pretty simple. But Auburn is so good defensively, and Kentucky is not. That it worries me a little bit in this spot for the Cats. The young Cats, Reeves and Mitchell got to play great. There's a lot more paths to victory for Auburn, it seems, than Kentucky. So if you're going to do the probability game, you pick the one that has the most kind of paths. And so, yeah, I just think it's that arena. Play this game 5 minutes down the road, and this thing be a lot more interesting. Play it at the gas station down the street, and maybe it's a little bit different. But this is Neville Arena, and the Neville Nations Agreement of 2024 says it's just not happening. So, yeah, give me the Tigers in this one.
This has been World History presented by Blake Lovell.
Yeah, the Brooms, Williams, Donaldson.
The Broom
Treaty.
Williams Tax
Alliance.
Act of 2024.
Oh, boy. You're getting taxed if you come into Neville Arena. I'll tell you that. So
20% of your earnings are taken from you the minute you enter the building.
Yeah.
That's
You are going into a net loss as soon as you step into the building.
I like that. That's well done.
Yeah.
All right. We've had our fun with this. We'll recap it later. Best way to get that, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. For Blake Lovell, I'm Chris Lee. We're Southeastern 14, presented by Bet Online.